Hey y'all, my name is Ann Wyatt. I started my career in workforce development with the state of Kentucky in 2010. That experience ignited a deep passion for manufacturing within me. I started this show hoping to raise more awareness around the bright outlook manufacturing careers have. Join me as I sit down with some of the manufacturing industry's most successful changemakers and learn how they're partnering people with technology. It's time to give people more meaningful work. This is Workforce 4.0. All right. We are back with another episode of Workforce 4.0. I cannot be more thrilled to be talking to Fabian Schmahl right now. He is the former CEO of BILSTEIN ThyssenKrupp, and he has his company Malink Solar and is an adjunct professor at the University of Cincinnati. And I'm so excited to get into this conversation today. You have so many gems of knowledge that I cannot wait to uncover with you. But why don't you go ahead and say hello and tell us a little bit more about what you do and your career path?
Well, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm originally actually from Germany, born in Germany, grew up there, got an education in mechanical engineering, and then in 2000 I came over to the US for 2 years, and that is now almost 24 years ago. I actually spent most of my time, let's say, in a bigger corporation, always in an operating unit, and kind of like moved on into different organizations. So my probably last 10, 15 years I spent with a tier one automotive supplier called ThyssenKrupp BILSTEIN, kind of like the market leader, technology leader in automotive suspension technology. So I was leading here our US business. We grew it in 10, 12 years about fivefold from sales, employment. A lot was automation, new products. And then about 2 years ago, I decided to end my corporate career and started to work on my own with some business partners together. And we invested into the renewable energy sector in a commercial solar company. And yeah, focusing now mainly on commercial solar.
That's amazing. And, I've worked in the automotive industry and I've also worked in metals and things like that, but I'm very familiar with ThyssenKrupp and Bilstein and that company brand. And just going back through and doing the research for this show today, I it was like a little trip down memory lane for me when I was recruiting for some roles in that are similar to that industry and just looking at your impression that you personally made on the company, because doing the research for those roles and remembering that point in time where, I'm pulling up all of these similar companies, and that one really stood out to me because it was such a cutting edge technology focused company. But also, the more important thing is that you all really did an amazing job keeping your focus on the people.
Yeah, I think that was always, I mean, for me, it's always a look at people, product, process, people, product, process. So I think you always have to find a really, really good balance. And if you go too far on one topic versus the other, if you only focus on people, it's great, but you need the product, you need the processes. And the opposite, you can't just, build all new processes and product and don't take care of the people. So, like almost like a balanced scorecard, you have to have a really, really balanced approach and bring everything up in a kind of like parallel manner.
Absolutely. And that's the give and take. That seems to be hard for companies to achieve because it is such a fine balance. We'll get into that a little bit more here in the conversation. I'm really excited about that. But in honor of Workforce 4.0, I've got to ask the very first question today officially is, what's your favorite karaoke song or song?
Well, honestly, I don't really have a favorite song. So I'm all over the place with music. So I like classical and opera, and then kind of like coffee house, bar lounge. Probably most influence I usually get by movies. When I watch a movie, like a week ago or so, I watched The Big Lebowski, amazing movie, and they're playing Out of My Back Door. And I think for the last 2 weeks now, I listened to that song like 3 times a day, which does create a little bit frustration in my family, some eye rolling. But usually I get stuck on a song for a couple of weeks and just keep listening to it. And once in a while I go back to like 80s, 90s German music I grew up with. So that's also then usually where my family kind of leaves the room and I get some eye rolling, but kind of like, puts me a little bit back down memory lane. I do remember last time did sing karaoke, which was actually pre-COVID. It's embarrassing, kind of like was here in Cincinnati at Tokyo Kitty. They had 99 Luftballons in German by
Love that.
Nena. And so that's from my memory, the last karaoke song I did.
I love that so much. 99 Red Balloons is a jam, right?
It is.
It is. I am very similar in the way that I listen to music. I will wear music out. Like if I find a song that I really like and I resonate with, it's a whole rabbit hole for me. I'm researching the song. I'm super nerdy, if you can't tell. But 99 Red Balloons was actually one of those songs for me.
All right. Look, we've got already
So
something in common.
I love that. Very cool. I always have to get this party started with the music because you can't have a good party without a good soundtrack, right?
Absolutely. That clearly sets the tone.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit more about people, process, product, which was one of your biggest influences that you had while you were with ThyssenKrupp Bilstein. But I did some more research previous to this recording today, and I found your article from CEO Magazine, which is absolutely amazing. And if you're listening today and you haven't checked it out, you've got to just do a quick Google search. You'll see it right there. You talk more in depth about people and culture and process and product. This is a win-win solution. But as a person behind the workforce, right? I really want to know what the concept of win-win and is to you and how to apply that to your frontline workforce. What lessons can manufacturing companies take from that previous experience?
Okay. So the whole topic of win-win is kind of like just fundamentally for me a belief that whatever you do in life, in your personal life, in your business life, there are always stakeholders. And I think, and very deliberate, I say stakeholders and not, if you look at business, for example, shareholders. I mean, you have to take care of your shareholders. But I do believe we have to take a little bit different approach to business, not just only focus on shareholder value. We have to focus on stakeholder value. And a big stakeholder, let's say in a company, for example, are the employees. Can be also the customers, can be suppliers, can be community partners, so, the city where you are. But I think it really starts with when you look at your actions, when you look at what you want to do, that you first of all identify all the stakeholders and then really try to put yourself in their shoes and see like, hey, how is this winning for them? And probably also engage with some individuals, and then get feedback and see again, how is this winning for them? So let's look a little bit more, let's say, practical as a company. I'm a big proponent in automation. I think this is really the future of manufacturing in the US. Instead of chasing cheap labor south or wherever or Eastern Asia, I think automation is the key. And I'm not talking so much about the 10, $20 million fully automated production lines, $100 million. They have their place for a couple of applications. I'm talking more about, let's say, lower cost, like collaborative robots, scalar robots, combining with some additive manufacturing and some other things. So in the first step, when you do this, from my view, you not only do you remove mundane jobs from some employees. So I would take that as a win because there are a lot of jobs nobody wants to do, but you also, hopefully, if you do it right, you increase your margins. So, and with your margins, so of course, some of it has to go back to reinvesting, maybe to the shareholders. But this really gives you opportunity not only for raises, but maybe focus more on training, make the environment, invest in your workplace, from lighting, air condition, whatever it is, cafeterias. So, you generate this overall, let's say, margin improvement. And now you got to just have, I think, a fair way to kind of like redistribute it a little bit. And last but not least, probably equally important than any kind of, let's say, compensation is, if you're a company, you should be able to not only offer people a job, but also offer them a career. And if you innovate and let's say, for example, with automation, you create actually new job classifications. Automatically now you need, let's say, automation technicians. So a production worker who today, I don't know, makes 16, 17, $18 an hour, no can, become an automation technician for maybe 25, $30 an hour, learn something, and really continue to grow his career. So I think there are a lot of aspects to it. You have to look at it and find a good balance.
Yeah, I mean, we see that and we talk about that a lot in this space, right? About how the importance of upskilling and retraining your workforce is going to drive your overall retention rates. It's going to make you more competitive as a company in the future. And it's also going to improve your retention and your culture. And from an HR perspective, I think it's really interesting because you kind of capitalized on two things there, right? You kind of brought in this idea of improving the workplace culture with things like technology or the cafeteria or the reskilling training, things like that, pay raises. So to me, those are two separate motivating factors when I'm going to look at recruiting needs and candidate needs and what those candidates are looking for in their next career move. Do you think that there is one without the other, or do you think there's a way to successfully drive both of these concepts of culture improvements and wage improvements at the same time?
I think it's a combination of it, kind of. So if I, for example, I look back like in 2008 when the big crisis hit, and I actually just started as CEO of BILSTEIN Automotive, and kind of like sales dropped off like a cliff. It was horrific. So one of the things we did a very detailed employee survey. And part of the employee survey was like an open space where we asked them to comment. I committed that we keep it confidential. I'm the only one who look at it, and the five key topics feedback from employees were like teamwork, training, recognition, leadership, and communication. They were not, hey, we need to get more pay, we need to get more vacation. Of course, you have to pay everybody fairly, and ideally, maybe even a little more than, let's say, the average. But I think equally important. So you have to cover this, and you have to take care of it. But there is so many, I think, needs for employees. We spend so much time at work, and so I still, until today, use those five things. I always have it printed out. Always have it with me wherever I go, wherever I do. I always look at those five areas and say like, hey, you take care of these as a foundation of a company, then everything else, will be much easier and much more successful to implement.
Yeah, what's that old saying? It goes like, "If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life."
Absolutely. Absolutely. But also, you have to say, like, from an organization perspective, those things are hard. Let's say, take communication. Effective communication is incredible difficult, and that the person you talk to little really listens, or let's say really hears what you are saying. And if look in a manufacturing environment, you're growing a company, and it all of a sudden it's multiple shifts, more employees, it gets harder and harder. So there's a lot of effort and a lot of work in all those areas where you have to find, if we take communication, good formal communication to message things from the company, but a lot of informal communication where daily you get a lot of feedback back from the employees, and to really make improvements and make changes in the organization based on honest feedback. And especially when you're top of the organization, you have to create an environment where employees are comfortable sharing really valuable information with you. And that takes time and effort. And I think that's where a lot of companies fall short, where like especially top management is so focused on PowerPoint and meetings after meetings versus kind of like being out there, engaging with employees, talking to them, learning about them. And I think it's 10 times more valuable than spending time in the boardroom.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, I've kind of seen that, and we've all seen that meme, right? Like, this meeting could have been an email. things like that. I think you've got to get to know the people of your workforce. If your workforce is made up of the people are individuals, and it's very crucial for you to make an impact at an individual level. Do you have any best practices outside of just going and being on the shop floor or in the floor engaging with your workforce at an individual level?
Yeah, I think so. So one of the things we did already 6, 7 years ago was a program we did with a partner together called Frontline Leadership. And there is actually, if you Google Frontline Leadership in Bilstein, there's a pretty cool video out there. And probably one of the most impactful things I've ever done, I was ever part of. So there were key employees in our organization, our former HR director, John Thompson, Christian Kirchen, who really developed the program. And it's focused. If you look at a manufacturing environment, usually 70, 80% of the employees actually report to frontline leaders, to team leaders, to supervisors, not to the CEO, not to the GM or president. And very often those team leaders, supervisors get promoted because of technical skills, right moment, and not very often do we give them the tools, the leadership tools. So we really focused on external training, in-house 90-day program, kind of like with projects. So where they again would learn always based on people, product, process. And the transformation of the organization, kind of like from retention rate to people engagement, internal promotion, and I could go on and on. It's absolutely amazing. And so we would have actually once a month a report out by those team leaders and supervisors what they had learned in their journey. And I can tell you for 2 years, those hour and a half once a month were always, I couldn't wait. Kind of like every month I would look forward to this hour and a half because it was just the most amazing and inspiring time you could have with your coworkers.
Yeah, those are really precious moments, I think, when you're
Yes,
kinda getting that energy of what did we learn? How do we grow? How do we keep growing? Those are really valuable lessons, and not only for the organization at large, but for the people. They kind of get everyone motivated. Those are those times when, maybe it's the bottom of the eighth, you know what I mean? And you're
absolutely.
tired and you're frustrated and you're ready to quit. Those are the moments where you kind of come in and you rally and you build each other up and you say, these are the things that we're doing well. These are the things that we learned about each other. These are the ways that we can help each other grow. I love that. That's a great success story. Thank you for sharing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you mentioned a little bit about upskilling with the workforce. Is that one of those methods that you found to be the most successful for your workforce? Or are there other methods that you feel like manufacturers or maybe other companies, leaders that are listening out there today? What are some of those best strategies that you've seen for
Mhm.
implementing upskilling?
So again, those 5 topics earlier mentioned as a foundation and the frontline leadership, which sets more the tone and the culture, kind of like to supporting each other, promoting each other. I think this is really important that you put those building blocks in place. Again, you can't build a tall house if you don't have a strong foundation. Then the other part I love, and we did it for the last 6, 7 years, is really starting to, let's say, innovate with technology. And I think it's kind of like a rising tide that lifts everybody up in the organization. So we started our own Industry 4.0 team in 2016, kind of like focused on a lot of different topics. But I think especially if you look at, let's say, collaborative robots, additive manufacturing, vision systems, which have come a long way,
Mhm.
where we used to kind of like had to maybe put for automation everything on plug boards. Now there's almost no component. You can just randomly pick, combining automation with cameras, vision picking. And then AR, VR, I think that is a topic from a training perspective is absolutely amazing, but specifically also from an engagement perspective. So when you do, automation, you do new things in your plant, in your facility, and then you want to share it, will get people engaged. Reality is, you show a drawing, most even engineers don't catch all details unless the engineer who really made the drawing kind of like and for sure not the shop floor worker, and he will not say something, but you put a drawing in front of him and all excited what you all want to do, and he will nod his head, but I don't think it's very effective. So you put the digital twin on some HoloLens or some AR or VR glasses and go out there and show it to employees. It's a completely different level of engagement. You get valuable feedback, what you maybe should do different, what you can do design different while it's still, let's say, a digital twin and not cut metal. But the employee all of a sudden is part of this innovation, is part of it. He gets curious, he maybe goes home and does a little more research, gets more interested. And I think a lot, you have to have this spark and get people interested. And then the majority of employees are sky is the limit. I mean, they can do so much more, and you just have to good ways to find to motivate them. And then, yeah, if you combine all of this together, I think you really have a winning formula how you overall upskill your workforce, create new job opportunities, and you improve your overall productivity and your work environment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're bringing back a level of emotional excitement when you introduce these things, right? If you really look and study humans and you really look at phenomenons that we see with Apple product releases every year and other, what is the Oculus is what I'm thinking of.
Hmm.
If you look at like this tech and how excited we as humans as a whole get about all of this, it kind of speaks to that, inner child almost in a way, right? When you're bringing these tools into your working facility and onto your shop floor, it's reigniting that spark, that curiosity, that excitement. So I think, there's so much to be said about the power of technology and how that can transform your workforce overall.
Oh, I,
But
I couldn't agree more.
speaking of that, and I think you kind of answered a little bit here, but what are some of the most successful forms of manufacturing technology that you've seen implemented? And how does that play a larger role in recruiting and retention in your experience?
Hmm. So yeah, going back, like if I look at the, let's say, different clusters of Industry 4.0, 5.0, I personally probably most excited about the things I mentioned: collaborative robots, additive manufacturing, vision system, AR, VR. You can look into some, let's say, I think really highly customized SCADA systems that you can do a lot in your own, let's say, own environment. That didn't you have to waste all your money on highly customized MES systems and things like this. But but going back, like I think collaborative robots are such a game changer in a work environment, and I'm always a little amazed how many companies I see I run into, quite often smaller manufacturing companies, owner, let's say, driven, and they just having a really hard time to make that first step on their automation journey. And those are like super capable
Mm.
owners. They started a company, which I think is already amazing by itself. They're successful, but somehow that automation piece kind of like seems to be hard for a lot of people. And I think, like a product like a collaborative robot, it's easy to install, easy to program, the costs are relatively low, you can repurpose it easily to a different product and project. And it's also now at a point in 16, we were probably still a little bit at the bleeding edge. So we had to figure out a lot ourselves. Now, well, we're still, I think, in the early adoption phase, but there's already so much knowledge out there. Either with on YouTube, you can reach out to people, reach out to me, happy to help. Kind of like, there's so much knowledge already out there that you don't, let's say, have to reinvent everything or go through all the hard lessons learned we did go through in 16, 17, 18. So yeah, those are the technologies which I find for the manufacturing world probably most exciting right now.
Yeah, and like you said, I think what's really exciting about some of these technologies is that the information is already out there. These companies that are really driving the impact on collaborative robots and augmented, workforce, connected workforce tools, they are publishing content like no one's business, educational content. They are really stepping up in the game. They are working with their local area communities. They are working with their tech colleges. They are doing everything they can to not only drive their own missions, but to make that information more available. And I think that's something that is really different in this era of Industry 4.0 than maybe some of the previous industry revolutions, right? Is that our access to the information is so much faster and it's so much more broadly available. So for you, and maybe this kind of goes more into that adjunct professor side
Hmm.
of what you do. What's your how do you personally get a hold of that information? How do you make it sure it's good information?
Mhm. So let me very quickly, I think one thing I wanted to mention also when we look at technology and what is important, the one thing I think which always gets overlooked so much is the leadership aspect. So it
Mm,
is foremost a leadership. So because you always have people who are hard time with change or resistant to change. And so in whatever size company you are, if you want to do something like this, it has to be driven by the leadership. I can tell you my own experience. Eventually, it flips around and the employees pull, and kind of like it will be driven by a much broader team. But to get it started, the first couple of years, the leadership is really the key. Of course, then you need to develop the technical expertise as well. But without the leadership, you will fail. Let's say for me accessing technology, I am kind of like an avid networker, kind of like I always look to connect with people. I love to go to different facilities whenever I have an opportunity. Today when I visit a customer, for example, for potential commercial solar, I always ask, hey, can I take a plant tour? Because I always learn something. I
yep.
always see something like I didn't see before. They've figured out a clever way to solve a problem. And the other thing I always try to do, I always try to give all my knowledge without really expecting anything back. And my experience is when you share, others will share with you too. Again, comes back to win-win. And obviously you don't want to share with your direct competitor, but with everybody
Mhm.
else, like I can only encourage people kind of like, and when it comes to Industry 4.0, share more and you will get things back. And this is again, the rising tide will lift up everybody. And it's the right thing. It's just fundamentally the right thing to do, but it's also fun.
I love that about our community too, the manufacturing community. I feel like that's our slogan at this point because everyone defaults to that a rising tide will lift all ships. I'm Southern, so we put things on pillows here.
Hmm,
But I think that should be on a pillow, right? Because that
absolutely.
is such a great representation of the kind of culture I think we're seeing emerging from all of this. And to me, that's really exciting because in the past, everything seems so siloed. And now it seems like we're collecting all of this information, we're sharing all of this information, we're helping each other push that boundary forward.
No, couldn't agree more.
Yeah, absolutely. So we opened this show up kind of talking a little bit more about win-win situations for the workforce. But I want to know, Fabian, as the person, how does Fabian win every day?
Oh, I don't know if I win every day, but I try to win more days than I lose. So I think that let me answer that two way. One, a little bit if I go back in the past in my my corporate manufacturing and environment, my biggest win was I always looked the last couple of years of return of engagement
Mm.
and really ROE kind of like so
ROE.
ROE, return of engagement. Because what drove me insane, we had through corporate some ROI calculations, return of investment, like Excel sheet, 30 tabs, each tab had like 10 to 20 inputs. So it takes you days to fill out that damn sheet. Then you have a bunch of corporate guys kind of like, of course, finding mistakes because it's so complicated. And all of a sudden like 10, 20 people are for weeks and weeks are busy with kind of like sending stuff forward and back. It's absolutely ridiculous. So if you can figure out, let's say, an ROI on with six, five, six, seven inputs and like one page in Excel, then you're doing something wrong, because what you need to do is you need to go out, you talk to your employees, you talk to your middle management, to your front line, and share the ideas about your investments and get their feedback and get their input. That's really value, and that's what I consider then a win for yourself personally, but also for the project. And that was one of my big changes 5, 6, 7 years ago, where I really started, let's say, I would not attend a lot of the meetings where before would spend hours and hours. I would delegate it and literally go on the shop floor and talk to employees and pick their brain about improvements and better ideas. On a truly personal side, I think I shared in the beginning, about 2 years ago, I thought like I had a long, pretty successful corporate career and I wanted to do a change. I wanted to do something different. So now working more on my own, having ownership in a company with others together, working together is an absolute amazing experience. And being in the field of solar renewable energy, I do believe it is a future of our energy independent, not only from an environmental perspective, of course, we reduce carbon, but it's also the lowest cost of energy generation. So it's really, really exciting. It's still a little bit, I think we're still a little bit in the beginning, probably a decade, 2 decades behind Europe, my home country, Germany. But it's fantastic to be in this environment, being with so many innovative and creative thinkers. I think that really stimulates kind of like myself and being excited to get up every day and do something in this environment.
Yeah, and I love that you're focusing so much on something you're passionate about, and that's a huge topic in Industry 4.0 as well, is sustainability and, the policy around being carbon neutral in the coming years. And I know I've talked to some other folks, and Europe is doing such an amazing job at that. Where do you think that the US is driving that innovation, and how do you think we're doing things right versus how do you think we could improve?
Well, I don't know if I can really judge that yet. I think we have reached a tipping point, so that will continue to drive renewables. I think one of the things we really have to follow on, I think we have gotten too much into environment where people either for it or against it, and it's almost this attitude like, hey, if you're not for me, you're against me. And it's
Mm,
kind of like, it's not
yeah.
gas, oil against solar and wind, or nuclear against. I think it's a combination of things. So we have to build out the infrastructure in the right proportions, but one doesn't automatically replace the other. However, you do, and I think always in life, you have to let go of things to make space physically and mentally for renewal and for new things. And that is a scary thing. But, comes always, I can tie it back to my manufacturing time. Once in a while, some older stuff you have to let go to just literally physically make space in your plant that you can bring something new in. And sometimes you have to, timing wise, you have let go before the new is really completely defined. You just have to be confident in your ability and your team's ability, and again, make room for renewal. And I think that thing where we still all have to work a little bit in the US to kind of like, it's okay to let some things go and kind of like and drive some change.
I love that. And I mean, that's a life lesson, right? I mean, that's how life is. It's ever evolving and changing, And I think as people, we're very attached. We don't like change, you
Oh,
know?
no question about it. Change is hard.
Change is super hard. And you think about the frog in the pot analogy, or I mean, there's some other similar analogies out there about change and how to grow and how to do all of that. And I see, is that a copy of Run, Improve, Grow in your background?
It is, yes. So my good friend Ray,
I love that. I have one too.
great
Uh,
book.
it is. It's a fantastic book. And Ray talks a lot about that. Ray talks a lot about changing and letting go
Absolutely. He's
and
amazing. He's
and
a big
growth.
inspiration for me. Good friend, business partner, but also I take a lot of inspiration out of Ray's wisdom and our interaction with each other.
Yeah, he's amazing. I think that's a huge leadership quality, though. I mean, realizing having the discipline to realize when it's time to grow and the courage to do it is such a great takeaway from that as well. Very impactful.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, we're about at time today. Unfortunately, I could sit here and talk to you for hours if we had capacity for that because I'm just constantly learning so much from everyone, but this has been such a great dynamic discussion about leadership and very empowering for me. But I want to give you the chance to share with our listeners today what is the best course of action if they want to connect with you.
I think the best way is probably LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so connect with me. Maybe put a note in the connection request. I do have a webpage, fabianschmahl.com, for a little bit showing my automation journey and experience. But yeah, reach out. Successful manufacturing in the US is really one of my passions. I do believe, kind of like for the middle class, we have to build things, not just trade things and
Mm.
import things. So anywhere where I can help somebody on their either automation journey, leadership journey for their manufacturing, I'm happy to help them, maybe, or point them in the right direction. And I do have to say it now, as I'm engaged in the solar world. Of course, anybody interested in solar and commercial solar for their manufacturing plant, maybe to reduce the operating cost, reach out. We're also happy to help you or point you in the right direction in your area and your region.
That's amazing. Yeah, we are getting to this new industrial age and all things automation. But with that becomes the responsibility of sustainability, and solar power is going to be such a crucial part of that in the next couple of decades, I think. Fabian, it's been amazing having you on the show today. I really appreciate your time, and I can't wait to talk to you some more soon.
Yeah, thank you again. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation and looking forward to talk to you soon again.